Samuel prophesied and foretold to to Saul and said, if you go to witchcraft, it's the ultimate in the rebellion, and Saul is in total and complete rebellion. Folks, you've got to understand that God will give you over to your sin. The judgment of God is not always destruction. The judgment of God is sometimes giving you over to that which you intended to do in the first place. Many times people find themselves steeped in sin and say, well, if God wanted me to stop, he would stop me. God hasn't stopped you. He let you go. He gave you over to your sin, and now you're completely drowning in it, and God is being like, this is what you wanted. You wanted to live in rebellion. You wanted to live in destruction. Look at how far you've gone. Now you're going to a witch because you've lost your faith in me. You've lost your trust in me. You're so far gone you don't even realize it. Romans 1:28, even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind to do those things which are not fitting. Folks, the judgment of God is not always immediate destruction. Don't believe that God's patience is his permission. Don't believe that for 1 second. There are times when God will allow you to go through things or experience things. Don't think that because you're going through it that God approves of it. It's not that at all. Saul wanted witchcraft. God used witchcraft and the spirit of Samuel to produce it. I mean, watch the story here, and we're going to get more into why this lady's a fake. But Saul is going to ask of God through a witch, and there's got to be a part of him that thinks like, there's no way this is even going to work. But he's so far gone, and God's like, you know what? I'm going to use this evil thing to pronounce judgment on you. Watch this. Even as Samuel comes back from the dead, Samuel doesn't tell Saul, you have a chance to repent. You have a chance to come back to God. God still loves you. He doesn't say that. He goes, you know what, dude? You are so far gone, you're going to die tomorrow. That's what Samuel says. He says, you're so far gone, you're just going to die tomorrow. Your hope is gone. You're not going to even make it at all. The witch wasn't even used by God. I believe that she was probably a fake. Why do I believe that? Verse 12. When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out with a loud voice. There's two things that went really wrong for this lady that seems to be making a living. First off, if she's so smart, how come she couldn't figure out it was the king in different clothes? Like the beginning of the story, if she was all powerful, she'd been like, you know what? The evil spirits have told me that you are King Saul. She couldn't even pick that much up. And so then when Samuel actually comes up, she's like, oh my gosh, something's actually happening. It's kind of like, you guys remember that old movie Ghost from way back in the 80s? Yeah. Remember when Whoopi Goldberg and she was there and then the spirit came up and she's like, oh my gosh, I've been taking advantage of people for years and now it's actually happening. Yeah. All the young people are like, what is this Whoopi Goldberg you speak of? It's an old movie, kids. Way back in the 80s, there was this guy with great hair named Patrick Swayze. Just making clay stuff, you know what I mean? They just don't make movies like that anymore, you know what I mean? But that's really what I think was happening in that moment, is that I believe that she had been taking advantage of people because she was, a false prophet. And then when something actually happened, it scared the you-know-what out of her, right? She was like, what is this? Like, this is actually working. God used her in spite of her. It wasn't her power because no one has the power to raise the dead except God himself. And when I'm talking about, I'm not saying I believe that Christians can pray over someone who has just died and bring them back. I believe that, but what I can't believe is that somebody can bring somebody out of the grave besides God. That's what I mean. Okay, I believe that we can pray over people that are dying and God can make them well. But I don't believe that Christians can call people out of a grave. Only God has that power, no one else. Nobody, okay? So what can we get out of this? Like we look at this sermon, we're like, okay, and this is where I struggled this week, as this is just what came out, man. And I was like, God, why do you want me to preach this? Like, why? Like, this isn't a message, and I'm like, this will be great or whatever. And it was interesting. After first service, someone came up to me. I kid you not. They came up to me and they said, you know what? I just want to let you know that this week the Lord had me and my wife fast this week and pray against witchcraft in our church. And then this is the sermon. And I was like, did you read ahead? And they're like, no. So we just felt like that's what the Lord had for us. And we didn't know why. And then we come into church and like, this is the sermon this morning. And so would you believe that this is right now for today for our church?
Yes.